Hi there, welcome back to the channel, The Tao of Wellbeing. It's been quite a while since I last made a video, and there's various reasons for that. However, I feel now is the time to rekindle the flame. So originally this channel started as a kind of recovery from chronic illness, partly a kind of just sharing of my journey through it, and then all sorts of insights that I kind of gathered and gained along the way. And then I realized that actually I had a really good toolkit already when I got chronically ill a few years ago, that I could then draw on. And I realized that actually honing that through applying it to recovery from chronic illness put me in quite a good position to help a lot of people with issues around energy management, stress, they call it stress relief, stress management, and sustainability in particular, like how to avoid getting really ill as best you can. Obviously, we can't control everything that goes into that. But so, living our lives in harmony and in balance with our inner selves, our needs, having that relationship with ourselves where we're not kind of compromising ourselves in pursuit of our goals. So for me, it's about kind of coming back to this much more balanced place where, of course, we have goals, there's things that need doing in the world, there's responsibilities, there's ambitions and dreams, and that's all great. But if we don't bring along with us the parts of ourselves, all the parts of ourselves, then sooner or later some of those parts are going to start kicking off, right, and causing a hell of a scene. And that can be, through physical illness, it can be through mental health issues, it can be just through, massive resistance that's actually telling us that we're not in alignment. Not just, sometimes resistance is just, kind of laziness or procrastination or what have you. But they're very, very judgmental terms. There may well be a good reason that your system is saying, I don't really agree with your agenda. Did you consult me, right? So a big part of what I've been doing, particularly with my counsellor through this process, has been identifying all the different parts of myself and making sure that they all have a voice at the table, right? So there's the kind of very focused, high achieving, want to get stuff done part of me. But there's also much more vulnerable, fragile parts. And it's like this whole integration is a really important kind of concept with all this, kind of integrating all the different factors. But it's actually old wisdom in some ways. It's like be in balance. So, the Native Americans have got the whole thing about, walking beauty, be in balance. I'm not sure which particular tribes have that one, but I know it's out there somewhere. And, Taoism is very much all about balance. Buddhism, the middle way. So, there's all these kind of ancient teachings that we can kind of access. And, there is a distinction, I guess, between these teachings as kind of sound bites or kind of almost trite, what's the word, platitudes. It's like, so you said some clever words, but it's not going to change my life, right? And I think that's a really key point with all this stuff, like, personal development, healing, recovery, burnout prevention, burnout recovery, sustainability, is that little sound bites aren't going to do it. If we live in this culture, it's like, I want to pop the pill, and then I just want to get on with my life. I'm living completely out of balance, but I just want this little pill that I can pop and then I can carry on, right? And it just doesn't work like that. So sound bites are not enough. The sound bites, the way it works is you have these deep transformative experiences, you have these revelations, you have these insights, and then from that, you can kind of have as a kind of a symbol for that entire process. You can have this, nice sounding little phrase, go with the flow, live in balance, whatever it is. But on its own, it means nothing. You might as well not say it or hear it or read it or write it, because it's not enough, just the words. It's the thing that it symbolizes that is important. And that is the entire process of, it's almost like I don't want to get all fancy about it, like kind of rebirth that we might need to go through to get to that place. So like our old identity, our old way of being it no longer works. And there's all these different priorities and values that are coming, and needs that are coming into play. And a lot of the growth really is about learning to listen to, like, not just the part of you that wants to achieve, or the part of you that is encouraged by society to just, see your value in what you achieve and just to be steaming on through. But to develop this sensitivity, this kind of all these different kind of sensor mechanisms, it's like, oh, actually, my body needs some rest now, or my body needs some warmth or comfort or stillness, or maybe I need some silence. Maybe my soul needs a bit of silence, away from far from a madding crowd. All these different things that you may not be even aware that part of you is kind of quietly hankering after because you're on this kind of mission, right? So this is like a really key theme. So this channel, it's really eclectic. This is it's a bit of a problem in terms of positioning myself in terms of how to help people, right? Because I'm drawing on so many different sources in my kind of well-being offering, sustainable well-being, and then bringing that sustainable well-being into achievement and success-orientated stuff, but as a kind of natural byproduct of well-being coming first. And well-being is actually, it's a kind of holistic enterprise, right? There's so many angles to it. You've got your physical stuff like the right kind and the right amount of exercise, diet, nutrition, health practices like whether it's Pilates or yoga or Tai Chi, this kind of stuff. And you've got your mental health stuff, and some of that is to do with like your thinking patterns, like your CBT and all the stuff that's kind of reprogramming your thought habits and what they call it in neuroplasticity and brain retraining. That's all important. And then like the emotional stuff. So that's like what you might do with like a therapist or a counselor. Working through your experience and your emotions in a much more kind of embodied somatic way. So some of these talking therapies that are purely focused on the mental level, they only go so far, because if you've got kind of stuff going on in your body, kind of stuck memories and trauma and all the rest of it, the kind of energetic imprint or the kind of physical imprint, if you like, of traumatic experiences, which it is. It kind of lives in your cell tissues, your tissue cells, whatever language I want to use there. It's embodied, right? And if we can't access that through a kind of somatic process, like bringing loving, kind awareness to our embodied experience, then, you're missing 90%. That's the thing, right? I mean, I've pulled that number out of thin air, right? But the point is, vast amounts of the experience and the place where the growth can happen and the healing and the transformation can happen is not at the level of just your thoughts. And it's certainly not at the level of just your kind of ideas about what you want your life to be, what you want to kind of impose onto the world in terms of how your life should look. There's this whole other level, the iceberg beneath the water. It's like that's where the majority of the stuff is. It's your emotions, it's your fears, it's your love, it's your relationships to others, it's your relationship to yourself, it's your values, and how well aligned you are with those values. So it's about that kind of ecosystem, a bit like my daughter's really into like mushrooms, like the whole fungus thing. Apparently it's quite popular with the youth these days. So, it's like what you see above the ground, you see the fruit, right? You see the fungus. But underneath, you've got the whole mycelium, and the whole network is a massive, vast network. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about sustainable, holistic, profound self-development, and personal growth. And also, once we've got the personal growth, that's kind of like the center, that's the foundation. Once we've got that aligned, then our visions for what we want to do externally can be grounded. They can be based in self-awareness. They can be based in, compassion, self-compassion, compassion for others. They can be sustainable, and they can make, a real difference in the world. Probably less so than if we haven't done that work. And even if we have a very altruistic motive in a kind of conceptual way, and we go out and we try and do some stuff, we might well make a big difference. I'm not saying we can't, but, long term, and possibly in terms of avoiding kind of hidden costs anyway. So we might think we're being really helpful, but actually maybe people are paying for our kind of hyper focus on achievement or a kind of lack of self-kindness, and that kind of reflects in our, our social context or work, work relationships and the rest of it. So really, there's, again, coming back to the holistic thing, it's like, there's this thing in Bon Buddhism, one of the many spiritual traditions I'm kind of vaguely associated with. The dedication of merit at the end has the line, "In liberating my own being, may I benefit others." And I think that's a really profound teaching. So in overcoming my personal pain, my personal my demons, all my obstructions and obscurations, everything that stops me from being all that I am, in doing that, that actually filters out into my world. And that can be so much more effective and sustainable than just having that intention and kind of neglecting myself in the service of others. So this happens a lot as well, I think, in our culture, is that certain demographics are, educated into this idea that, the good life is serving others. And I've seen so much, and my eyes have really been opened, particularly, living with a chronic illness and, getting to know people living with chronic illnesses and just understanding the amount of unrecognised, unpaid, relentless care that goes on. And not just in chronic illness, obviously, but, like parenting and looking after parents and looking after, people that have additional needs. And, basically this kind of salt of the earth keeps the whole world running smoothly, doesn't get recognised, doesn't get paid for. And it's a kind of inverse valuing that our culture has. So the people that do the most important stuff tend to get paid the least, right? Not always, but I think that would be a fair comment in general. So, how to really be of value to ourselves and to others through a balanced, integrative, very self-aware, very embodied, kind of relationship to ourselves and to our lives. That's really what this channel is about, and that's what my wellbeing coaching is about. To get to that place, there's many, many tools, whether it's, I don't know, so many things like, meditation techniques, Qigong, Tai Chi, breathing, exercises with your thinking, metacognition, working with your emotions and kind of hosting your emotions with love and compassion and allowing our experiences to kind of fully move through, having the courage to show up and be vulnerable with ourselves and be vulnerable with others, how to build support networks, and how all of this can then tie into getting those goals sorted, but not at the cost of our well-being or the well-being of those around us. So this is a kind of like rekindling of my channel, the Tao of Wellbeing, with a view to offering coaching services, wellness and success. I think the title I'm going to use is wellness and success coaching. I've done various bits of coaching here and there, but I need to kind of find the right way of presenting myself, and I think that's how it's going to be. So wellness and success coaching. So hopefully that's interesting. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.